Yeah, my friend went to Michelle Wolf, she's a comedian. She went to maybe UAE. I don't know, one of those countries where women are just like not really equal, and everyone got on her. She went to perform.
Yeah.
And it was like, how dare you? Why did you go there? And she goes, maybe it's something cool to show them like a strong, independent woman. Why don't we show them a version of womanhood instead of just saying like, I'll never go there. Like you're not actually helping by not going there. How are women there in Afghanistan?
Well, I mean, obviously in this environment with these new decrees, and I don't know if you've seen these new decrees which have been issued in terms of women not showing their faces or raising their voices and so forth.
I like that. I like it, man. If we could have that here where they can't raise their voices, I'd be down. Not showing their faces, I do not respect that.
Well, but in practice, of course, women are active. They go out and about. They drive.
They do drive fine. No one looks in the way.
I don't think a lot of women want to drive, but the ones who do have a car and want to drive, they can drive.
Everyone wears hijabs or not really?
No, you have to cover your head, but not face. In the cities.
In the cities.
It all depends in terms of how strictly they impose their rules by the local authorities. And the Taliban, like say the Republican Party, is going to be different in New York to
West
California
Virginia.
to somewhere in the deep south, right? So some Taliban officials in some parts of the country have a more liberal approach to things, and some are more conservative. And so it depends on local implementation of these decrees and rules.
Oh yeah, good point. I remember after COVID, I met a rabbi who's very beginning. It was still before the shutdowns.
Yeah.
I met a rabbi and he was like, hey, come by, he knew me from comedy. And he's like, come by sometime when we open back up again. I was like, you're closed? It was like right before the shutdowns. He goes, yeah. And I'm like, why? I thought religious exemption. And he was like, well, disease doesn't care.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not putting any old men at risk here.
Yeah.
But across town, they were like, oh, we're staying open. I don't care how bad it gets.
And they suffered, right?
Maybe. I really don't know.
Yeah.
But the idea is like Jews do this. Like, no, this Jew says we're shutting down. Go pray at home. This Jew says, no, you still have to come.
Yeah.
So there's not like one. It sounds like it's there too.
Yeah, but with any situation, it's never that black and white.
Right.
There's a lot of nuance.
Yeah.
And it's easier to paint a black and white picture of all Muslims are bad, or all Christians are aggressive, or whatever. But even with the Taliban, I think it is not that black and white. And there are people who are more pragmatic within the Taliban movement, and there are ones who are much more conservative.
Right. Can you get laid in Afghanistan?
If you're married, you can. Or if you're a Westerner.
Yeah.
Do people have relationships outside marriage? I'm sure. Listen, if you're talking
not wholesale, but I mean, like, if someone like, I came to visit. I had sex the first day and the 9th day, just some random. Is that like what, or is that like, oh, cool, whatever? If you get laid in New York, it's not that notable.
Yeah. Well, technically, it's against the law.
Okay.
But I think that if you're caught being friendly with a Western woman
woman,
yeah, they would leave you alone.
But Afghani women's aren't.
No, I think that would be a bit of an issue.
Okay.
I would caution you to
not try. I have no game anyway, so
to resist for a week.
Do they have a problem with, like, some places are like, if let's say you have a girlfriend and you're staying somewhere, they're like, hey, just say you're married, because they don't want a boyfriend girlfriend staying in the same hotel room.
Well, I would think it's like the U.S. military. Well, in the old days, they won't ask and you don't tell. But I think with Westerners, they understand that people have long-term relationships. And people are content to leave you alone.
And that's you guys do it. It's fine if it's you.
Yeah, they'll probably volunteer to watch.
Do they get porn and stuff now? Is there any influx of cool parts of Western culture?
I think that's probably one of the reasons a lot of Afghans get the internet
for porn.
It's a phenomena that's it's consistent throughout the world, right? We had to create all sorts of filters because our own staff members would download things they shouldn't, and
what do you mean?
I mean, they would go on all sorts of different sites, and we had to block them.
When you say all sorts of different sites, you just mean porn, or you mean like crazy
gambling, porn, and things like that. And so. But
in black and white because you couldn't trust them to do their work, or because it was evil to look at it? No,
because of work, and also you shouldn't be looking at those sorts of things. I'm not saying majority, but I'm saying there were instances with young men would download things they shouldn't.
Did you hear that Elon Musk thing? He went uncontactable tribe somewhere in the Amazon or something.
Yeah,
he was, I'm going to get you guys internet. I'm going to get you guys what you need.
Yeah,
out of the goodness of his heart.
Yeah,
and then immediately they're all watching porn 19 hours a day.
Yeah. Well, I had a really interesting. We had. So we did do a lot of work in terms of polio eradication.
Polio eradication, okay.
Right, and Bill Gates is a big funder of that.
God, he's huge with that, and the what's the one the mosquitoes give you?
Malaria.
Malaria, yeah. There's no funding for malaria research if not for Bill Gates. He's like 98% of it.
Yeah, and it's he's, to his credit, he wants to do it, but he also wants to be the person who eradicates polio forever, and he got very close to it. Yeah. So anyway, I was invited to a dinner. So it's Bill Gates and a whole bunch of people, like prominent Middle Eastern ministers and the head of, McKinsey's and, and they go around the table and no one's drinking wine except Bill Gates, and he's putting down these wines. And they go around the table and everyone is like, let's go around the table and discuss how the internet's impacted you. And one guy says, well, it's about education, sir. And they're all making these comments, standard comments to impress Bill Gates. So, and I'm probably the last person to say something. So it comes to me. He said, what do you think of the internet and how it's impacted people, and say, in Afghanistan? I said, I'll tell you a story. One day, our head of finance, this gentleman probably in his 50s, comes in. He looks around, closes the door, sits down. He said, sir, what's a she-male? Because he'd looked it up on the internet. Right? Yeah. So for a lot of people in these countries, the internet is all about that. Joe Rogan would love that. And he couldn't even pronounce it properly. And it took me a while to figure out what he was trying to say. But
that's a Himalaya.
Yeah. So I think it's the internet's not. We all thought 30 years ago the internet was going to change the world in a very positive way.
Yeah.
But even without these social media companies, I think a lot of.
Is there Afghan social media?
Well, they're on Instagram, on TikTok, and so forth. Yeah.
I wonder how that's changing this fucking very traditional world to hey, you're part of the world now.
Yeah, kicking and screaming.
Yeah, it's like you can see it all, so you're in it.
Yeah.
Such a massive quick change.
But Afghans and others suffer from the same things. You've got fake news.
Yeah.
The Russians and the Chinese and others are obviously amplifying all sorts of anti-Western stories. There's a lot of
interesting, and they're reading those.
There's a lot of there's a lot of hatred, along ethnic or religious lines that's amplified by these social media companies. The algorithms affect the Afghans as much as they affect you guys. So the fragmentation of this world is not. It's not just the Western world. It's also impacting people in our neck of the woods.
Where you been and where you going? This is Ari's travel show, yeah. We're gonna go on a journey today and see what there's to see in this big world. We're exploring different places, seeing all different types of faces. We're gonna talk about travel today. It's